So let's kick things off.
Okay.
I'm here with Annie Eissler. Why don't you tell me a little bit about you, your company, before we jump into everything? How did you get to this position? You're a VP.
Yes.
Right? How did you get to become a VP? What was that journey like?
Oh, let's see. I actually have been a VP many times in many different companies. I've been in technology marketing for a long time, like 30 years.
Yeah.
And so this particular role at AlphaSense, I work for a company called AlphaSense. We have a market intelligence platform.
Yeah.
And the company's kind of on fire right now.
Yes, it
so
is.
one to watch, if you're listening, one
Yeah.
to watch. And I worked for AlphaSense's one of their biggest competitors, and they acquired us in May of 2022.
Wow.
And at the time, I was the VP of marketing of that company. I headed marketing for that company. And when I came over, I really hit it off with our CMO, and she immediately brought me into the AlphaSense, her marketing leadership team. And I have 3 teams that I run. Customer marketing is one of them.
Right. And your CMO is one of our Fearless 50. She is a customer-led marketer. She really believes in it, which means if she brought you into the fold, right, that
Yep.
you really know what you're doing and you really have an eye for customer experience, customer delight, really looking at how do we increase adoption and engagement rather than just how do we just sell more to our customers, right?
Yeah, exactly. I do have the upsell responsibility.
Right.
So that's a huge responsibility because as we know in today's day and age and B2B SaaS tech companies, retention and growth of our existing customers is king, or queen.
Right,
and,
or queen.
Yeah, and so that's a big really, really big responsibility is the upsell nut that I have. But in addition to that, I've been able to get the green light to build a full customer marketing team that covers adoption and engagement, so the life cycle, growth, as well as advocacy. So I've got people in each of those roles as well as a director of customer marketing.
Which shows how dedicated you are to the entire journey, not just the output at the end. Because you can't sell to someone who's not using, right? If they're not adopting and engaging, what are you going to sell them? I use this analogy as, imagine you buy an $800 Vitamix, right? And you buy it because you think it's a great idea. The person at Costco does an excellent demo and it's a great tasting juice and you get, hyped up on it. You buy it, you take it home and you make one smoothie and it's like, okay, and you stick it in your shelf. Now Vitamix is sending you all these ads for a $200 replacement handle that's more ergonomic. But this thing lives in the shelf. You're never buying the handle. Yet in B2B space and SaaS, we're like, oh, we got to upsell. And you're like, they're not using the product.
Exactly.
We've got to get them using it first. Then we can upsell them. Then, like if I were introduced to Vitamix into a community where other people like me and it showed me how to make a smoothie in 4 minutes or less that my kids would actually like on their way to school, and I could get all these things and it made me kind of a pro at it and I'm using it every day, I'm not even being upsold on the handle. I need it because I wore the other handle out. Right? It's just par for the course. And so that's where we want to get to. And I know part of what you're doing at AlphaSense, which is huge, and it's not the topic we're going to cover today, but is journey mapping. And that shows also the dedication because that is not a small rock to turn over. Right?
Yeah. Journey mapping it's really, really tough. As I said in the talk that I had yesterday, it's, our companies were not built from the ground up with the customer experience in mind, most of us, right? We work for companies that each different function, was set up, its processes, its procedures were done kind of just looking at that particular function. And so there really is no true consistent customer experience across the organization. So that's a really important starting point for us.
Huge, right?
Yeah.
And isn't it crazy when you unveil something like that? It's moving, right? We don't actually have a customer experience.
We have many customer experiences.
We have many experiences and they're not consistent and they're not necessarily always replicable. Right? And so how do you it's so hard to not only map that, but when it's not consistent, you can't build off of it.
Exactly.
You can't plan.
Exactly.
Can't optimize.
Exactly. And we absolutely are seeing that and why this is required for both our adoption and engagement and scaling that as we grow as a business, as well as our upsell, where we want to look to have have an automation of upsell so we can see what are the triggers within the product, within their engagement with our team that would then kick off the upsell motion. We need to have some repeatability and consistency in the process that they're going through.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've actually left a company because I realized that they weren't dedicated to that. And I'm like, so I can't do the upsell part.
Yeah.
Which is what I want to do, but I can't get there.
Yeah.
So exactly. I get it. And for those of you who are listening, we're not just in some place and some time. Annie and I are both here together at the Customer Marketing Summit in Oakland, California.
Yep.
Right? They call it San Francisco, but we're in Oakland.
We're in Oakland.
We're in Oakland.
We're not
Let's
in San
be real.
Francisco.
We're in Oakland. And you have a whole session, right? And a wonderful topic. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the session, the topic, and why it's so important?
Yeah. So this really was about just what we were just talking about customer journey mapping. And how important customer experience has become for us B2B people in B2B tech, right? Because our buyers are used to the kind of delightful customer experiences that are being designed and they're using every day in their personal life, right? Technology companies like Apple, right? So they are expecting that same kind of experience in their work life that they're getting in their personal life. And so customer experience has become a really top priority for B2B tech companies. And even though they say that it's a top priority, there still really aren't very many companies that are dedicating either teams or working groups to really looking at the customer experience. And the reason why that is because it's, as we were just saying, it's just really, really hard.
Right.
It's a very hard thing to do, to create the internal alliances and stakeholders and bringing them all together and really uncovering what the touch points and the milestones are throughout the customer's journey.
Yeah.
You know, we came across a lot of times where our stakeholders would say, well, does this happen then? And they would say, oh, well, yeah, sometimes it does, but in this particular instance, it may not. And when these particular people are involved, it may not. Yeah. And so there's a lot of kind of like, maybe that might happen, might not happen. We don't really know, right? So, it's just a lot to uncover. And when you want to try to distill all of this journey into like a simple visual representation, that's really, really hard to do when you have all of these variables that could happen. So
all the sticky notes.
Yes, all the sticky notes. Phil could fill this room that we're in right here.
Yeah, all the walls. All the way around.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know it's intimidating, right? It's not just hard, it's intimidating. It's a lot. So it's like, how do I even start? But just like you're doing at AlphaSense, you're kind of MVPing your way through it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you just start, every journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first step, right? Yeah. It's like you just start.
Yep.
Start to get your ducks in a row, start to move it. And little by little, you'll start to peel it away. And the next thing you'll know, you'll be in a full-blown AlphaSense journey mapping exercise.
I know, exactly,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, so we're starting small with one particular customer segment, but I think the key thing here is, there wasn't really anybody else stepping up in the company to do this, right? And each different divisions within the company, functions within the company had kind of their own little, this is our journey in our area, like customer education or customer success, but nobody really looking at the whole thing. And I think nobody pushed back on me when I said we were going to do this. And we got basically our CRO on tap to be the executive sponsor of this, and he felt it was really, really important for the business. So important that he decided to tell the board about it. Wow. So that puts a little bit of pressure on our team. Yeah. And then we do know that it's very important to build those alliances with the stakeholders. I know our SVP of customer success this is essential, having this customer journey map defined and modified so that it is predictable and scalable is really important to him meeting his business objectives and scaling his customer success team to meet the goals that he knows are coming in the future. So
that's alignment if I've ever heard of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is executive alignment. Something you brought up a little earlier, and it just kind of came back to me with what you were talking about, why this is so important, is we often think of an experience as something as almost like a nice to have in the B2B world. But if you think about it from a product standpoint, like Not every phone had cameras on it. Once one phone had cameras on it, all the rest had to because you expected it, right?
Yep.
If you're in cars, we didn't all used to have the giant navigation screens in the middle, but now everyone expects it. If it's in that car, I want it in my car.
Yeah.
The exact same thing is true with experiences, right? When I get a Netflix-like experience, now I want all my apps to be a Netflix-like experience.
That's right.
You raise the bar for all. So every time it's continuous bar raising, it's not individually set,
Yeah.
right? And so what you're doing is so critically important, and it also plays into how you scale your team, because now you know where you're at. So talk to me about how, because when you get acquired by another company, right, there are a lot of redundancies that can happen.
Yeah.
You made it through that.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And not only did you make it through it, you've acquired more teams in the process. So
Yeah.
you know what you're doing. How do you set yourself up for scale? Where do you focus? What are the priorities in scaling a customer marketing team?
Yeah. Well, I think they're the same for customer marketing as it is for anything else, which is really understanding what are the business goals, what is the business mission, what are our OKRs at the top up level, and then how do those ladder down
Right.
to what it is that,
Yep.
that I'm doing on my teams, including customer marketing. And then what are those KPIs and OKRs
Right.
and targets and metrics that we have?
Right.
And then ensuring that we're focusing on the programs and the activities
Right.
and initiatives that are going to drive those.
So let's talk a little bit about
KPIs.
yours and how did you scale your personal team? Or how are you planning to?
To scale, well, I scaled it quite a bit over since I at least as far as the customer marketing side
Yeah,
is
let's hear
going.
about
So
that.
when I very first came on, which was last May, there was basically one person writing customer stories.
Right.
So it was pretty basic. Now I think prior to me coming in previous years, they'd had somebody in customer marketing that was doing more things, but at the time it was one person writing stories. And so I looked at our integrated marketing plan that our CMO had set out and our key pillars. We have I think it's 5 key pillars.
Yeah.
2 of those pillars I own. One is our a business line that I own Alpha Marketing for, and the other was customer marketing. And on the pillar slide, it says the mission of this particular pillar is to create customers for life.
Yes.
And I thought, well, I got to create customers for life, and I just have one person focused on customer stories. It's probably not going to get me to that promised land, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I made the case to basically expand and to really have a full life cycle marketing team in customer marketing, and so I ended up getting approval to hire a director. And I've got someone focused on life cycle. They partner very closely with customer success to look at adoption engagement. That's the person that's running the journey mapping exercise, and then someone on upsell and growth.
Yep.
And then one person dedicated to advocacy. So that's where we're at right now. I have dreams of hiring 2 other people next year.
Yeah. What would they be focused
We'll
on
see.
in those dreams?
They would be a second person to focus on growth,
Yeah.
and a second person to focus on life cycle. And,
Growth,
and actually,
life cycle.
I take all that back because I actually also recently I did get approval to hire, and I've just hired a person who is going to focus on what I'm calling our executive programs, which across several of my teams, or all of my teams, but the customer advisory board, this person will be responsible for that as one of several executive programs that we will be.
Were you taking notes on the customer advisory board panel today?
I was. I developed and ran customer advisory boards elsewhere, but there's so many different, as we saw today,
So many
different ways to do
go
it.
about it. Yeah.
To do it. So
Absolutely, just like journey mapping.
yeah, exactly.
I just want to expand a little bit on life cycle because it's so important to me. It's like the Vitamix story, right? It's how do we get that? What, other than the journey mapping, which is its own stone, what would you have life cycle actually helping do? What would their focuses be?
So they are responsible. Well, they're responsible for our customer newsletter. But the other really big thing that they do is we do a lot of partnering with our customer success team on onboarding, adoption, and engagement programs. So
Helping curate that content for them?
not to basically creating the full flow in partnership with our customer success organization. So here I'll give you an example. We recently we had a new product that we were launching.
Okay.
And it was targeted at some of our consulting customers, and it was the ability to purchase one-off transcripts for this one business line. I guess that's neither here nor there. But in order to roll this out, successfully roll this out, we needed to create an ongoing cadence of outreach emails and touches by our customer success team, sort of tag teaming between them and marketing, to continually stay out in front of the potential users of this product. And so we basically curated assets that the emails would link to, pop-ups in Pendo, all of these types of things on it. So there was an ongoing cadence of outreach and education to the existing customers for these solutions. So we do a lot of that in the life cycle. So that's a really big piece of that particular product.
It's huge. And to expand on that, I noticed, like, you look at our typical marketing cycles, when a prospect is getting engaged, there is so much content that we have produced for them. Beautiful, well orchestrated, in sync with sales, right? It's all handed over, it's smooth, it's transitioned, then they become a customer.
Yeah.
And then you have CSMs who are piecemealing different decks together on their own. Marketing disappears on them.
Yeah.
They have no support for the assets that they need. Maybe some one-off things that are done on the side, but not high priority. So it takes forever to get them because we need those case studies and those white papers, right? We need those analyst reports out.
Yeah.
And so it's great to hear that you have put an extended focus on this and why that's so important. If you were to give some advice to people trying to scale their teams, right? What would that advice be?
Well, outside of just ensuring that you're really just staying really super focused, we know that, especially like on the advocacy side, I mean, we can get pulled in a million different directions, right? And being very, very strategic about where you have your team focused. For example, on our case studies, we basically partner with sales and our product marketing team, and we discuss, this next quarter, or this next half a year, what are our priorities in terms of where do we have gaps or where do we need stories to tell? And then that's what we focus on. We're not just
building in a bubble.
It's very specific and strategic. So being really, really, really strategic. But I think ensuring that you're always working on your cross-functional stakeholder relationships is really key.
Yeah, so key.
Really, really key to ensuring that you're going to be able to get the support that you need when you need it, and ensure that you're all working in unison. So I'd say spending as much time as you can with your peers, and with your peers. Your peers, the people bosses that they report to, that you're creating those relationships with those people and you're nurturing them on a regular basis.
Yeah, and a great way that I know you talked about it earlier, that you stay in their good graces is you keep them informed.
Yes.
In bite-sized, manageable. Don't overload it. They'll never look at it. They have busy schedules. They consume information at the lightest speed or speed of light. Right? So you got to make things, but keep them updated. Keep them in the loop. Right? Keep them close. So you keep those stakeholders informed and fed. And they continue to be hungry. Right?
But it's kind of adding to that is, I think, even more importantly, and I spend a lot of time on this, is I'm always educating and training the people on my teams to do that too. Right. And a perfect example of it is at the end of every week, we do a weekly update. All the teams across the marketing organization, we put updates in a slide, and then on Monday morning, our CMO, she kind of packages that up and puts the highlights and sends it off to our ELT and our senior leadership team. And so I'm always going into those weekly updates that my team, I'm having my team do these updates themselves. And then I'll go in and say, well, you're kind of written it like this, but you have to remember the executive leadership team is the audience for this. So you always have to be thinking of what are they going
Put
to,
their lens on.
what are they going to care about? Are
Right.
they going to care about the fact that you worked on a
Yeah.
email sequence in Marketo today?
Yeah.
Probably not. Right?
And that's really important because you can't be everywhere.
No.
And so you've got to trust in your team to help you, right? You're all a cohesive unit.
Yeah,
Right?
and you want them to be developing these
empowered,
skills and empowered.
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we're going to wrap
Okay.
this up with, talk to me about a couple pitfalls that you've experienced, a couple failures that you've learned from that you would help people avoid in the future.
Let's see. One of my personal failings is sometimes I will forget a stakeholder in a project or an initiative
Right.
or keeping someone informed.
Yeah, yeah.
And that it periodically will happen, and I can tell you it definitely
Yeah,
comes to
it creeps in.
get you at the end. So like, again, going back to that, it's always really important to be very strategic around keeping.
I wonder if you've been having like a
stakeholders.
visual, map of your
Yeah.
stakeholders and keeping that present.
Yeah, yeah.
And every time you're going back, you're like, did I?
Yes, exactly.
Did I?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that definitely has gotten me before.
Well, Annie, this has been an absolute wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know how incredibly busy you are, so this means a lot to me, all of the listeners. Thank you for doing this with us.
Thank you so much, Ari. I appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Okay.